I stand here today as a global Indian, a proud global Indian, and I'm here to share my story, my own journey as a global Indian and about other global Indians. I love the concept. You can call me an evangelist of global Indians, and I love telling stories of global Indians. And I'll share my own story of becoming a global Indian. It began when I went to study international business at the University of South Carolina. And it was where I came across a concept of a borderless world. It was fascinating to know about a borderless world where labor and capital could go across borders freely. And it mattered to me as an Indian who had so many restrictions on movement, on applying for jobs. It was frustrating to know that there are so many jobs in the world, so many opportunities in the world, and Indians can't apply for them. Indians thrive when they go abroad. Whenever an Indian goes abroad, they change. The biggest value add an Indian gets is when he goes overseas and becomes a global Indian. And you can see that it changes his personality, it has an effect on his family and on his community. Not only that, it has a national impact every time a global Indian happens, because he brings in ideas, he brings in network, he brings in capital, he brings brand India. And global Indians like me were built by many places, by experiences in many places. I went on to Silicon Valley after South Carolina. It was the right time and the right place to be in Silicon Valley because it was like the Renaissance in the 15th century. Like it was a time when Leonardo da Vinci or the Gutenberg press or Columbus discovered America. That was how Silicon Valley was. And everything that you know of today, the internet, the mobile, Adobe Photoshop, LinkedIn, Salesforce, everything was built during this time. It was a time where Steve Jobs was trying to, fix Apple, and used to have all these billboards of think different. So that was a lot of grooming for me. And I came to know the power of an idea from the Silicon Valley. One of the big beneficiaries of the Silicon Valley and the times were Indians, because many Indians came to Silicon Valley into the US on an H1B. And they came to solve the Y2K problem. Indians monopolized the H1B as well as the student visa in 1990s and 2000. When I came back from Silicon Valley to Hyderabad, to India, I could feel a new evolved Indian. This Indian was almost a new species. And he was a go-getter, globe-trotting, jet-setting, exuberant. There were so many adjectives to describe the new Indian. And that Indian, I wanted to get a word that described that mood, that mindset, that entrepreneurial spirit. And that was the global Indian. That was an idea. I think it encapsulated, it embodied that energy and spirit. Until 1965, the US had a quota of only 100 visas for Indians. And only 100 visas until 1965. So the Immigration Act in 1965 changed all that, right? And in 1967 was the disruption of immigration. What happened was that Canada introduced a point system in which anybody in the world could now apply. Otherwise, it was only a white immigration policy. So anyone, now you could, on the basis of your education, on experience and age, get points, and you could be eligible for Canadian visa. It really opened up the world to meritocracy. Today, if you're writing the SAT and a GRE or a GMAT and TOEFL, and you get grades, and all those add up, you can even get into the best institutes of the world because it opened up to everyone. And this was a time in the 1970s, two things happened. There was an oil boom, and many Indians went to the Gulf. At the same time, there was Africanization, and Indians were expelled from Uganda, from Tanzania and Kenya. And they were given a 90-day notice to leave the country. and they go to the UK. And Rishi Sunak's, the Prime Minister's parents actually were part of this migration. But there was nothing like 1991 when H1B was introduced, right? That changed everything for Indians, because for the first time, now Indians could go, techies from India could go, high-tech workers could get high-tech jobs and high-paying jobs. This was a new thing. And India became a winner because it monopolized most of the visas. And H1B was a big hit. It was a big hit on both sides between the US and India. They literally tripled the quota. It was such a successful visa. It was 65,000, it became 195,000. So what started with 100 became 195,000 in H1Bs plus student visas, right? So who got the highest number of H1Bs? Indians. In Indians, who got the highest number of H1Bs was the Telugu-speaking people. Much of the benefits came to this city, and this tea hub is just an outcome of those visas. It was not like this in the first wave of Indian migration. Indians were taken as indentured labor across the British Empire to work in the plantations. These Indians never came back. And then in the second wave, we had soldiers, the Sikhs, Punjabis, fighting as soldiers for the British. They were all around the world, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Canada, and they settled down as farmers in these places. And today, they were probably the richest farmers in the world. We also have shopkeepers from Tamil Nadu migrating to Singapore and Malaysia during this time in the 1920s. But in the 1960s, as you saw that immigration, they started relaxing immigration, and there were lots of doctors and engineers, IITians leaving the country. That was clearly at that time a brain drain. We were losing a lot of our resources that was funded by public sector institutions. So that was indeed a brain drain. But the fourth wave was the age of the global Indian. We had great success. Indians in India making a name on a global scale. Indians making a name in all walks of life, right? In the age of the global Indian. And we also had the fifth wave, where Indians were returning back to India. It was a returnee entrepreneurship, and people would come back to India. What happened with all of these waves, right? It created the largest diaspora in the world today. It's 32 million people, Indians, and 2.5 million Indians migrate abroad. It's huge. And you have an Indian almost everywhere in the world. Indians in the US, for example, are the richest minority. Indians, they own 60% of all the hotels in America. You have the Gujaratis dominate the diamond industry in Antwerp. So you see Indians are all over the world, and chicken tikka masala becomes the national dish of the UK. You wonder how that happened. Diaspora stories are very, very interesting, because one of the best conversations to make with anyone is, how did you get here? Because that is a story, that's a journey. All these journeys, when you see them from a very personal level, it changes. You understand that what they have gone through. Let's take Gandhi, for example. How does an Indian become a global Indian? How does he have an impact on India? He got married at the age of 15. He wanted to go. His brothers told him he'll sponsor him to become a lawyer in London. And his mother said, you can't go, because Hinduism prohibited any Indian going abroad. Can you believe that? Today we have the largest diaspora in the world, but Hinduism prohibited Indians going abroad. And Gandhi's mother was very upset that he is going abroad. And his priests, in fact, ostracized him. Gandhi ends up going to London, and he struggles to be an Englishman, to fit into British culture. He comes back to India, not a great lawyer in Bombay. Then he gets an assignment to go to South Africa. In South Africa is where he becomes, like many other global Indians, there is something else that changes the global Indian. Again, he's not a successful lawyer in Bombay. He goes to South Africa and finds success. The train incident that you saw, he was thrown out. Indians were very successful in South Africa. Okay, let's not forget. Gandhiji was traveling in the first class compartment, and they told him to go to the third. And that started, he was facing racial discrimination. And he found that the best way to resist this was satyagraha, non-violent. He was doing that. He was there in South Africa for 22 years. Ambedkar, great story here. Another great global Indian. He was an untouchable in a village in Maharashtra, and he was a student who couldn't enter his class. He had to attend classes from outside. And even if he wanted to drink water, he would have to call the peon, and the peon would pour water. He gets a scholarship from Columbia in New York. And he goes, and he sees, he's so discriminated here. When he goes to New York, he's mingling socially everywhere. And he comes back, and, he becomes India's first law minister, and he, in fact, drafts the Constitution of India. You have Narayana Murthy. This is another interesting story, how Narayana Murthy, he was a communist bent. He was in Paris, and he was on his way back, and he was way back from Paris to India. And he thought, let me hitchhike my way back to India. So in those days, he would stop people in the car. Narayana Murthy would get into a stranger's car, get into the next station, sleep in railway waiting rooms, and he was a type of guy like that. But he wanted to see Eastern Europe because he liked communist countries and everything. But he had a bad encounter, and that was a changing point. He said, no, that is bad. Socialism and communism is bad, and he chooses capitalism and goes on to build Infosys and creates a global delivery model, as they call it, and it gave birth to the Indian IT. And you have Ambani, who goes to Yemen. He was attended in a petrol station, but he learns the ropes of trading and yarn, and finally comes back and becomes the richest man in India, the Reliance Industries. Satya Nadella, he never thought he was going to the US. He was not very keen. He just took a chance, and he did get a student visa. And in his own words, he says it was like hitting a lottery. And he goes to the US. He was at the right places at the right time, and he becomes the CEO of Microsoft. But the future of global Indians keep changing. If you look at Gitanjali Rao, and she's such a great inspiration for all of you, because now the global Indian is shifting now, right? She is a 15-year-old innovator, and she devises a low-cost device to detect lead contamination. And the way she goes about making that device at the age of 15 is incredible story of persistence, innovation, and coming up with that device. So that's the new age Indian, the new age global Indian. And that is what I want you to be inspired by. What we have here is global Indians again evolving. You see Rishi Sunak, you saw the Indians being expelled from Africa. His parents were from there. But he goes on, Indians invest in education. He goes to study in the best of schools, goes to Stanford, and whom does he meet? Narayana Murthy's daughter. It's like a soap opera of sorts, a global Indian soap opera of sorts. So you can see the powerhouse now, right? And he goes on to become the Prime Minister of Britain. Now think about it. What would their kids do? Right? What kind of access do they have? Far, far from where we started in the first wave. I like to draw a parallel between Joseph Campbell's hero's journey and the journeys of global Indians. It's so close. What is a hero's journey? A hero's journey is a story in which most of the films and good epics like the Odyssey or movies like Star Wars are based upon the hero's journey. In the hero's journey, there are 3 stages. There's separation, there's initiation, and return. It is when in separation you get a calling. The hero gets a calling that he must go. And then he finally leaves in his calling. And then he goes through all the troubles and the struggles, the trials and tribulations, and he transforms himself. It is being initiated to the initiation to be a hero. And he changes, and he finds what he's looking for, and he returns. And that is the global Indian story, right? Global Indians, most Indians never leave home, or India never leaves them. My question is, would global Indians have been successful had they not gone abroad? That is the question to ask. What would Gandhi have been the Mahatma today had he not gone to South Africa? Would Ambedkar have written the Constitution had he not gone to Colombia? Would Ambani have created Reliance had he not gone to Yemen? What would Satya Nadella be had he not gone into the US? Didn't he take a chance? That experience, those struggles is what made them global Indians, right? And what is that quality that makes an Indian a global Indian? Indianness. Indianness. Let's see what is an Indianness about. And I just threw in a bunch of all, it could be all of them or one of them or a few of them. They come from a very competitive environment, like India, like only 2% or something or 1% get into the IITs. Everybody has to fend for themselves, right? They're resilient and hardworking. That's typical of most Indians. And they're very focused, invest in education, have a natural aptitude for math and abstract thinking, are very good at the English, and they're very frugal, and that's why Indians succeed. And when they put all of this and they meet the best and the brightest people around the world, they are in cultures and systems that allow them to succeed, they thrive. Indians thrive. If you look at where we are today, right? India today is clearly the source of migrants, of students. Student towns depend on Indians coming there. Many countries like Canada and Australia need to populate their countries only through Indians. If they have a job, they need to outsource it to India. Right now, even manufacturing is coming into India. Then we also are a big marketplace. We're also a place, no one can beat the Indian marketplace, right? The number of customers that we have. So very clearly, it is the age of the global Indian. Jeff Bezos was saying this is the Indian century. For various reasons, there's so many opportunities today for Indians that you should take it. There's never been a better time to be an Indian, to be a global Indian, and to be in India. With that, thank you.